introduction to the metal shop. So, you know, I mean, everybody's been in the metal shop. I assume you've like your body has gone inside of it, at least during your orientation. There's a lot in there. It's honestly, it's got some of my favorite machines. I'm definitely at some point during today going to spend too long talking about the water jets. So just prepare yourself for that. It's gonna happen. It's so cool later. So we'll talk about kind of, you know, a little bit about metal in general. And then we'll get into, let's see, will it let me? Is it gonna let me? There we go. Yeah. Into, you know, yay. We'll talk a bit about metals, about tools, both manual, you know, just stuff that doesn't have a motor, machinist tools. We'll talk a bit about working with metal measurements, which becomes way more important, I think, in the metal shop than in the wood shop. Wood, it has a lot more give, you know, has a little bit more forgiving on your measurements. And then we'll talk about some metal starter projects. Oh shit, I have a metal starter project. I didn't even realize. It's perfect. So, you know, I said this for the last 2 weeks and I'll keep saying it, that we have lots of knowledge, but feel free to chime in if I say something wrong or if Adam says some nonsense and you happen to know something about metal, please don't ever feel like it's just us talking at you. Yeah. So. Identifying metals. Oh, I forgot to grab the little, I don't know. Do we have those on the foundation shelf or are those Chris's, the little titanium circle?
Oh, Chris has them.
Chris has them. All right, I won't worry about it then. No, it's fine.
Also,
I'll grab it for next week. Yeah.
your slides are not showing for me at least. Maybe.
It did. Why does it do that? That's
Just loading when I
Yeah.
let's try that. Oh, good. Now I can't see my screen. Good. That's perfect.
Oh boy, sorry.
All right. No,
I was in trouble.
no, I'm glad you resume share. Amazing.
If you hit stop share,
Maybe if we stop,
do it again.
just start all over again. I'm glad you all can see my whole screen so we can know that it's messing with me.
Oh, here we go. The problem is it's clicked on only one participant can see at a time. So go back to where you were and hit multiple participants. So share screen, there you go.
No, it says can share at a time.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's fine. That's fine.
So there's just the people at home that are watching?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's Corey. You know him. Yeah, and Caitlin and Sunil are from home. Yeah, just share my desktop. Just do that.
Sounds right. There you go.
Yeah.
That's
All
it.
right. All right. Am I gonna ruin everything?
Yeah, it works.
All right. All right. We're good at things here. All right. So metals come in a lot of different varieties and colors and densities and magnetisms. You know, here's an array of, you know, some stuff is very familiar: bronze, brass, steel. We've all got a ton of aluminum everywhere in our houses. The letters on all of them are their
They're elemental symbols.
elemental symbols. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm a chemistry teacher for my day job. There's like it's a fun side note. There's 118 elements that we have names for, and like 80-ish of them are metals. And those are just pure metals, not even like steel, which is a mix of stuff. So there's lots and lots of metals.
Does anybody know what the tastiest thing on this screen is?
With the what?
Tastiest thing on the screen is. Yeah, nailed it. Yeah. They used to put lead in in wine back in, you know, Roman age, which you know, is perhaps a sign. But there's a lot of different, as Corey was saying, there's a lot of different elements and a lot of metals that we can use. I think aluminum, steel, copper are probably the most common ones that you'll find yourself using for classes.
What's the one on the top left? Did you go back?
Top left,
The one next to brass? With it?
That's iron.
yeah.
Brass is another fun one, and it's like mostly copper with a little other stuff.
I always remember the FE is iron because it's Iron Man is female. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes such perfect sense in my brain that that's always how I remember it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, these are all the elements. Do you want to talk about the table of elements, Corey? You don't have to, but I
There's
know
a
you-
lot to say, but the weird squiggly is basically circling the metals. So you can see there's a whole bunch of them. Most of the metals that we interact with, it boils down to like 5 that are on here. And so stick to the things that were pictured on the slide before and you're good, but there's a lot of weird metallurgy as a whole career
Yeah,
if you want to just do that.
yeah, I don't think I've ever run into osmium, whatever that is, yeah.
Oh, and this is just within iron and steel, like just thinking about iron itself. There's different like ways the crystalline structure develops. So if you look on the right, the middle picture is like a way to see the crystal domains inside of a piece of iron. So you can see where the little stripes are broken up differently. Those are edges of the internal structure. And based on the size of those, you get steel that's like extra strong, you get steel that's extra stretchy, steel that's extra hard. There's a whole lot of like, you can go way deep in the weeds on just understanding how steel works. If you just wanted to, you can have a whole career just being good at that, knowing just how that works. So there's a lot to unpack here, and people will build up this knowledge over a lifetime.
Yeah, don't feel like you need to understand what all of that is. It's just to indicate like how much heat and adding other things in changes what a material, becomes and how hard it is, etc. Also, that's a really cool casting bucket. Can you call that a bucket? It's so big.
Yeah, the little guy in the bottom left corner of it. Yeah, that's an adult human.
Yeah, that's
It's-
how the picture
Yeah.
is like, that is the super blown up size of that little kayak cast that we have in the jewelry station. Functionally the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, these are hardness testers.
Yeah,
And
this
so,
is
like-
really cool. This was hard for me to understand when I first learned about it, that hardness is measured by comparison. And so like, there's nothing that's the ultimate hardness. It's, a diamond is harder than aluminum. It's always in comparison. And yeah, there's like all sorts of tools, and I'm sure we've got a bunch in the metal shop as well. Yeah, we've got a bunch of like, they're the ones I usually see are like little sticks with different colors, and it like, you can use, they're all different hardnesses, so you can use them to like try to scratch whatever metal you're using, you're working on, to see how hard it is. And that can give you an idea, which is sometimes useful if you don't know what the metal is, especially like if you take something out of the scrap pile, you want to know how hard it is so you can figure out the right way to work with it. And so these are, this sort of stuff is a good way of determining that.
Yeah, it's the Rockwell scale. We have a set of those. A set of those files. They're really great. Chris will show you exactly how to use them.
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely used Chris's hardness to just poke stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's what you do.
This is a cool one. I really like this part. This is
Yeah.
a thing that like iron does, that steel does, where it gets this coloring as you cut off chips. If you're hanging out in the metal shop, you might see metal shavings that have these crazy colors. Those are really thin layers of rust that have formed on the surface of the steel or the iron, and the thickness of it, of the oxide layer, the little rust layer, is what determines the color, which is mind-blowing. And then to go one layer deeper, it reached that thickness because it reached a certain temperature. So like you can tell what temperature the metal got to by its color for just steel in just certain cases. But what it really means is that you have this spectrum where like you can have metals that are really, really hard which is something that happens if you heat treat steel. It can become really hardened steel, and that's great, but it's often then brittle, so it'll like shatter if it breaks. And sometimes that's what you want. You want a really hard thing to cut into other metal, and so it's really hard. And it's okay if it shatters on a drill bit, because that's how it goes. And every drill bit you've ever broken, they've all snapped or shattered, I'm sure. They've never stretched. On the other end, like some metals, if you pull on aluminum hard enough, and it's like, it's annoying to come up with a good example of this, but if you have aluminum that you like wrap up, if you take a sheet of aluminum foil, roll it up into a thing and you pull on it, you'll see it stretch some. It's a softer metal and it's more pliable, more stretchable. You can do the same thing with steel. If steel has been mellowed out, if it's been annealed a whole bunch, it'll be soft and pliable and bend. And you've definitely seen like shocks on a car bend and things like that.
Or like when you're hammering a nail and it just bends in half because you hit it the wrong way.
Great example.
Yeah, it's a softer metal, it's pliable, so it's not going to hold as well, but it doesn't explode on you.
Yeah, and nails and screws are good examples. A screw will almost always snap, and a nail will almost always bend.
But yeah, there's lots, like I said before, there's lots of different types of metal. And again, like, don't feel like you need to know all of them. I think in the like 2 years that I've been doing stuff at MakeHaven, I've used steel and aluminum and copper. That's like, that's all I've run into. But these are aluminum, really common, soft. I do like the idea that some metal workers don't even consider it a metal. It's like the American sliced cheese of metal, which is like, there's a time and place for American sliced cheese, like the pre-packaged, cheese product. There's a time and place for that. Usually 4 a.m. in front of my refrigerator with the door open in my pajamas. There's brass, which is a great color, copper, pewter we see in like old, like dishes and whatnot.
It's great for casting.
Yeah.
Pewter is a lot of fun. The melting point's really low, so you can cast it really nicely. There's some cool stuff to do with that.
No, also toxic, so don't put it in your food.
Yeah.
I think don't lick metal is probably just like a general sort of thing,
Yeah, but like we all use stainless steel spoons, right?
Yeah, it's true. That's very
So
true.
some of them it's fine.
Yeah, titanium, I've only really run into is people like having as their wedding band. Zinc is what's in pennies. Yeah, iron, steel carbon is hidden. But this, if anybody's familiar with McMaster-Carr, is an awesome company that will get you whatever it is you want delivered overnight. They are hands down more expensive because you'll get exactly what you want the 12 hours later. But if you're looking for something in a rush, if maybe you've forgotten to order supplies for the MIG welding class, McMaster-Carr, excellent option. But if you're trying to save money, McMaster-Carr is not the way to go. Around here, we've got Granger has a storefront in North Haven. Logan Steel is like the go-to. Yeah, it's up in Meriden. It's just a warehouse of supplies. You will just wander through there for ages and just end up kind of awkwardly carrying lots of pieces with you. There's no prices on anything. It's all just like you bring it into this little office and they weigh it. But you can get a lot. We made a trip up there earlier this year. A bunch of us did. And I feel like it's called a bargain barn. So like bargains in the name. It's definitely, if anybody wants to go and you want to make it a field trip, I'd be happy to go. I'm always happy to buy more supplies to add to my ever-growing pile of projects I'll get to someday. But McMaster-Carr is really great if you want a certain size, you want something maybe a little unusual. It's a good site to know. Well, I forgot this slide was here. Yeah, these are all the places you can buy metal. Yeah, you can of course also go to Lowe's or Home Depot.
It's pretty limited at those big box stores, but it's available, right? Like you can get, if you want to get small certain things, you can get it.
Yeah. And yeah, there's different forms that you can buy your metal in, whether it's in sheets, it's in tubes, bars, blocks. square tubes. It all just depends on what it is you're looking for and what you need. I've never bought sheets that were any bigger than, kind of smaller stuff, but there's also, I know I talked about this before, but there's any reuse in North Haven, which I'm still in love with. They also have a ton of metal. They have more wood, I feel like, but it's called NE Reuse, like any like New England and then reuse. And it's on Sackett Point Road in North Haven. And it's not a real place. It's like a movie set. It's in this warehouse that you would not know is even open, never mind open to the public, just in this worn out parking garage or parking lot. And you go in and like, you just have to walk through just like a weirdly empty, like office area. And there's just like no smoking signs everywhere. And then you come around the corner and it just opens up into like it's like 3 warehouses worth of stuff. And the woman behind the desk that's just like piled, like MakeHaven's got nothing on the mess this woman has on her desk. She's just like, how can I help you? But like, she's amazing. I love her so much. And their whole thing is that they reclaim materials from like houses that are getting demoed. I bought a bunch of furniture from there when we had to set up some rooms for Airbnb, because they just had like all of Yale's old dorm furniture. Just hundreds of dressers and nightstands. And we got dressers for $20 a piece that are all solid real wood. That would be perfect to like, we use them as a dresser, but you could absolutely just deconstruct them and use the materials. Like it's a great spot.
Is that any?
NE Reuse. Yeah. REUSE. Yeah. And they've got pretty decent hours. I usually just go in the middle of the day, but they're really great. Yeah. I do not get a cut from sending them people, but I really love them. They're so good. And they love MakeHaven. They love like the idea of MakeHaven. So every time, like I've honestly gone enough that they know me. But people have gone and like had, I think, varied experiences. I've definitely heard a few people say that they like felt like they overpaid. But I think it's, I've always had a great experience. Your mileage might vary, I guess. Oh, I just realized
We're going nuts in the chat talking about aluminum.
okay, you tell me if I
And-
need to start paying attention to the chat.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. Sunil and I were talking about aluminum as a material is so weird. I've had it melt onto end mills on a CNC machine, and it's a fun one. It's probably easier to work with hand tools. But there's lots of ways to get and think about and work with metals, and it's just good to like try and explore them all. The fun factoid that Sunil appropriately brought up is the top of the Washington Monument is aluminum, because at the time when they built it, it was one of the most rare and expensive metals, because basically the modern process requires electricity, and there just wasn't. So
I
And
didn't-
now we wrap fruit in it. It's just crazy. Right?
yeah.
Huh, that's it. Yeah, I didn't know that. All right, metal tools. So we will spiritually enter the metal shop. There is a metal shop badge, which you can get, just it auto applies once you, I think, watch the video and take the quiz, but it's good for like, you have to have it, but like also it's good for like the more safety aspects of the metal shop, which can be dangerous, and, respectful, not dangerous. So we have a lot of ways to cut metal. Oh boy, there it is at the bottom. We're coming to it. You can chop your metal, you can grind it. There's, some of this stuff is if you've been in the wood shop, will feel familiar. The drill press, Jesus, the drill press, the chop saw, their cousins live in the wood shop. And in some cases, like we keep metal shop and wood shop separate. You don't cut metal in the wood shop, you don't cut wood in the metal shop. And that's both, different hardnesses, but also, wood can have moisture in it. So if you bring it into the metal shop and you're, shooting that damp sawdust all over the place, you're going to cause rust, you potentially cause rust to happen.
Yeah,
but
those
It's extremely flammable.
Also,
Metal shops have sparks.
yes, they do. And I think, I mean, clothing and safety gear is important for all, for both sides, but I'm definitely a lot more aware of wearing sleeves and like higher cut shirts when I'm in the metal shop, because the sparks are hot. Yeah, sparks are hot. But yeah.
Another thing that's good is non-synthetic clothing. If you're wearing cotton, the metal shards and chunks, they'll bounce off. If you're wearing synthetics, they might melt in, and then that's not what you want.
It's not what you want. Closed-toe shoes, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, jeans, closed-toed shoes, you're fine.
Yeah, sorry. Pneumatic tools. Adam, do you want to talk about pneumatic tools?
There's a bunch of different ones for. A lot of times pneumatic tools will also have an electric version. So like there's pneumatic drilling tools and pneumatic, there's a couple fun ones. There's one that just like nibbles a piece of metal to cut shapes of sheet metal and just like punches out as you go along. It's like a vibrating chisel for breaking, chipping into stuff.
And a pneumatic tool it's the like 3 on the bottom.
Yeah, so they're operated by air pressure, so they plug into the air hose.
Yeah.
But there's a couple that pull down from the ceiling.
They can be very loud. Don't let it scare you.
Air hearing thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm just gonna also last one. Water jet. I'm not saying it's the best machine we have in the entire of MakeHaven, but like it might be.
It's definitely the most expensive machine. we have
It-
in MakeHaven.
Yeah, it's
Which
definitely
one?
the most expensive, the water jet.
Several.
Yeah, the water jet will cut the world. Everything. It will cut anything you put in it. If you go down there later, in fact, if anybody is interested and wants to hear me talk about it more while standing next to it, I could show you some of the stuff that I've cut on it. And it's really great. It's in a way, it's a CNC in that you upload a file and then it cuts, the design that you give it. But you can cut out, wood, you could cut out wood if you wanted to, but it'll probably ruin the wood. But like metal, glass, aluminum, stone, everything. I do, it's downstairs. Yeah, so I was re-trimming one of my flower beds. And I have these 4x8 granite blocks, and I needed half rather than a full one. So I brought it in, put it on the water jet, it cut through it in, I think 5 minutes, something like that. And I left the other half down there so you can see it, and feel free to touch it. It's very cool because you can also see the way that it cuts. It ends up cutting on an angle, like kind of how, because it's water and sand and PSI. So it makes these like curved lines in its cut. It's so cool. And you can just cut, I've done so much cool stuff on it.
We have a member who will cut wood on it all the time because he's like, it cuts it and it sands it. So it's a win-win.
True, if you don't mind it getting damp. Yeah, you
Yeah,
absolutely.
he does marine grade plywood, which
Oh.
feels like overkill in all the ways.
Yeah, probably. But it is the biggest, it is very loud. I yell fire in the hole every time I turn it on. But it is super useful. If you want to get precise cuts, it will do like really fine detail, really small lines and cuts and cutouts. And there's right now, I think there's like somebody cut out a little guitar out of aluminum, and it's just on the counter, and you can see all the strings it cut out. It'll etch, it's great. It's the best machine. I love that. I love the water jet so much. I'm glad that Lior keeps fixing it. It's not that I break stuff, it's that I just think I have bad, I don't know, I might break it. So after cutting, there's grinding and shaping. So again, a lot of machines that look a lot like the stuff that's in the wood shop. You've got grinders instead of sanders. That's functionally the same thing. We just use different words for the same, make it smooth. So we've got, when you first walk into the wood shop or the metal shop, all those tools that are kind of like right immediately on those tables on the right, those are almost all grinders and polishers and whatnot. So for taking off burrs, for shaping, these are all really good options. You can also bend your metal. In the second row, all the way on the right, that is a press brake. Which one is that?
Your best break.
Yeah, okay, okay. Fair, yeah, so I could put, you know, you could put 45 and 90-degree angles on metal really precisely and easily. And there's no motor on that. You just turn the wheel and it just lowers it. And there's different sizes. You can do all sorts of different sizes. There's grinders, the one with the flames on it. I've never noticed the flames before. That's for putting curves into your metal. So you run it through those two wheels and it bends it. So there's lots of, you know, I think commonly we think of metal as this like really stagnant thing. It's metal is solid and it's in a shape and that's it, but it's really not the case. And you can make metal do kind of whatever you want. Which is, I think, really cool. I mean, talk about like affecting the world and making it do your bidding. Joining and fastening. Again, wood shop, metal shop, very similar in some ways. There's lots of different ways to fasten metal. There's stuff that's familiar, like the bolts that you see at the bottom. You can weld, which is what both of those are. And like that, you should get like a long pointer. So you can just
Yeah, nice. A nice addition I like when you're playing in metal is the rivets work really well, that you can just sort of put two pieces of sheet metal together. And then a lot of the time you have these highly precise machine screws, which is what that thread diagram is all about, that you can get really intense connections that way, and you can tap the material you're working in. It's hard to like put a thread in a piece of wood, but it works really well in metal, that you can just have all that stuff integrated into the piece you're working on.
yeah. Corey, would you mind? I feel like you understand it better. I'm pointing like he can see me. The difference between the metal screw and the wood screw that's on the bottom of the middle.
Yeah, totally. The machine screws have really tight threads. And so you can see there's like the two black ones that are diagram like. The one with a flat bottom, that's a machine screw, and it's got lots of little threads that engages. And sometimes those are called bolts. It depends on exactly how that's going to go. But a screw has that larger thread. You can see the space between each spiral is bigger. And that's because it's going into material that is going to deform a little bit more, like wood or plastic. And so it wants to sort of cut that groove in on its own as the screw goes in. And each tooth needs to go a little bit further. For either type of screw, traditionally you want like at least 3 loops of engagement. And so you can see for some materials that's a lot deeper in for a screw, for like a wood screw, and in a metal screw, you can have just a very short distance in your metal and you could still have 3 rings engaged. So it's something that you think about. And it's why when you have a jar of screws, I would encourage you all to have 2 jars of screws, one for fine pitch and one for coarse pitch, to be in wood and metal projects.
I just have a table in my garage that I leave them all in a big mess. That's also an option.
Yeah, works.
Yeah. And welding is also really fun. If you're looking for like a thing to get into in the metal shop, I find welding to be a lot of fun. It's sparky and it's cool.
I would say if you do one thing in the next 2 weeks, you should weld something, just
Yeah.
anything at all.
Yeah.
I mean, the water jet is a great second pick, but if you just do one, I would say weld something.
And then next week we do.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to say, don't feel bad when your weld doesn't look like that. Because I think I have a picture somewhere of the first thing I welded. It was not winning any awards, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. But what is a machinist? A machinist is a tradesperson or trade professional. It is Wikipedia. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like this is a whole a whole like category of person. I used to live in Cleveland and I had lots of buddies who their day job was being a machinist. And so they would run CNC machines, or very rarely there'd be an old timer that would run a manual milling machine. And they would just take chunks of metal and turn them into precision parts. Like a friend of mine named Sam back in Cleveland, he made fighter jet parts and they had to be so precisely made that it was insane. And it's a great paying job. And if you want to go work for Electric Boat, they definitely are going to need machinists out here. And it's a whole skill set where
Yeah.
people can spend entire careers doing just this.
Yeah, and this is Brandon, who teaches the Bridgeport and the lathe class. He is a machinist. Yeah, you could be your whole life if you want to. So metal tools, what we got? All right, I can't tell what that is. What? Oh, okay. So these are some of our more precision tools. The metal lathe, which is the green one, is in a lot of ways similar to the wood lathe. Again, you make round parts on it. It's different than all the other ones because the piece you're working on is moving and the machine is holding it still. The Bridgeport is the one that's underneath it. Bridgeport is the grandfather of, is that a cat? Yeah. The Bridgeport is called that because it was made in Bridgeport, Connecticut. They are originally from here. And I just found out, this is just trivia, but I was fascinated by it, that they made, when they first made them in like the 30s or 40s, they just made like thousands of them, and you can still buy a brand new Bridgeport, like the original. They're still like, they still have stock.
Yeah. Some of those parts are huge pieces of cast iron.
Yeah.
That, I believe it, but that's mind blowing.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it's just, it totally threw me for a loop. The box that's open in the middle is the Tormach, which is the metal CNC. It is definitely, if any of the machines in MakeHaven are like hard to access based on badging, that is the machine. That is the hardest machine to get yourself badged on, because you have to have done the Bridgeport, which is also a class, and you have to have the Shapoko or the Gerber, one of the two. You have to have that badge as well.
You need to be good at CNC things and the Bridgeport things.
Yeah.
Which is a little, I think I will go back and forth again and again. I think that it's the easiest of our CNCs to operate because it knows exactly what it is and it helps you along the way.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
The lathes are cool. The green German lathe there, or Swiss lathe maybe, is a cool one. Lathes are one of the few machines that, apart from the motors, can be fully self-reproducing. So you can use a lathe to make all the parts that it takes to make a lathe. Like you can use a lathe to make screws and nuts and bars and flat things, all sorts of stuff. And actually, like if you imagine, first people started with stone tools and then like weird other metal tools, and how the heck did we get to now? In the mid 1700s, the invention of the lathe was the first step towards all of these machinist things, because the lathe could then make more precise things, and they used lathes to make more precise lathes, and yada yada yada. Here we are with very precise tools, but it all started with and comes from a lathe.
And the machines start making themselves, and we're obsolete.
Yeah, just put ChatGPT in it, it's fine.
And then so there's also a lot of measuring. As I said before, metal requires a higher precision than wood does. And we have a lot of tools for that. I'm not even gonna bother trying to there's a whole hour-long video on that, to badge on all of the measurement tools and whatnot. But this one on the very bottom in the middle
Looks like a table.
It looks like a table, and it's got, you can't read the sign from here, but what this says is do not use this as a table. Because it is as close as we can get to a perfectly flat surface. So if you're measuring, if you're looking to see if something is perfectly flat, It also has attachments so you can check 90-degree angles. It's like the most benign looking thing in all of the metal shop, and it's so exact.
Yeah, I've actually used it to like with a piece to see what's high and what's low across the surface. It's bizarre, but when you need it, it's exactly the thing you need.
And there's of course a lot of other tools that, we have in here. There's hand tools, of course. And again, a lot of this is going to look fairly similar to stuff that's in the wood shop, hammers, files. I guess we probably don't have any anvils in the wood shop. That would be not very useful. But we have that anvil in the, that's an anvil.
Okay.
So you're gonna use that with forging. So you heat the metal up, which is, well, they're doing a different thing, but you heat the metal up in the induction forge, which is that it's a black box with a little copper coil that water runs through, and then, because they won't let us have an open flame in the basement.
It's actually tons of electricity runs through, and it's like making a huge magnetic current in magnetic eddies in your steel, and it gets glowing hot in like less than a minute. It's incredible. And then you hit it with a hammer on the anvil.
Yeah, so you can see, it's got the flat part that you can use to flatten whatever you're working on. It's kind of hard to see, but right there is a square hole. So you can put your metal into it and then bend it at whatever angles you need. You can also, the weird little cone bit that comes off of it, that's used to make curves in whatever you're looking for. And the reason that it tapers is so you have lots of options of where, how severe the curve can be. Super cool. You don't need classes for any of those. But you can if you want to. We have them. Then you have the brake. We talked about those before. So the file really messes me up, but is like such a great example of, I had this idea that metal was just like permanent. And like, it's so malleable in some cases that you can use a file on it. Speaking of filing and working on metal. All right, Corey, I'm just handing the science straight off to you. This is
You're totally fine. Okay, so you know how we spent a lot of energy the past 2 weeks talking about how wood is a bunch of straws, and there's these straws, and like the glue gets in one side, or you glue along the straw, all of that. Turns out metals are completely different. They are just solid. And they're polycrystalline solid, but all the polycrystalline part doesn't matter. They're just solid objects. The same as it, I would put a metal closer to like a hunk of plastic. They're going to machine similarly. There's not a grain structure to them. In the chat, we've been talking a little bit about stone. Stone is going to work a little bit closer to wood because there's probably granules in the stone. But in plastics and metal, you've got this very even substructure. And so that little GIF in the bottom corner where it's satisfyingly pulling off little curls, that can happen because the material's incredibly consistent throughout its entirety. And you get benefits of like, it can conduct electricity and heat really well. There's some reliable things about how it works. You can make very predictable statements about how a metal is going to act, as opposed to like wood. For wood furniture, every time somebody sets out to make a piece of wooden furniture, they have to actually assess the wood. You don't have to with metal, you just have higher forces to deal with. So it's a little trickier. But it means like you can get incredibly sharp edges, and the chips, if you're doing it right, the chips pull off all the heat from the metal and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about this a little bit before, but it is definitely worth touching on again. Personal safety is very important. Non-synthetic clothes, no dangly bits, goggles. Absolutely. I mean, we always wear safety glasses in both of the shops at all times. Clamping down all your work pieces. Something I had to learn when I was getting into the metal shop was don't worry about too many clamps. Put too many clamps down. It's okay to put one more. If you're like, should I just clamp it? It's fine. I have used all 6 of those clamps that we have at the water jet, and it was a good idea. You don't
at the drill press. Yeah. Drill pressing things in the wood shop. I will sometimes, and don't tell JR, I will hold a thing on a wood drill press. I would never do that with a metal drill press. That's basically the difference, is they just have way more torque.
I think you just killed Adam.
Oh geez, I'm sorry, Adam. Yeah, it's a bad move. You should clamp in both situations. And I have a very high risk threshold, so it's probably not a good measure. I will occasionally hold things in a wood shop, but never, ever, ever in a metal shop.
Yeah. You didn't know that was good. Okay, apparently you didn't kill Adam. You shocked him because he didn't realize he wasn't supposed to be doing that as well.
Oh yeah.
All right, we're all good. We're all good. Yeah, don't wear gloves. This is actually really worth talking about. So wearing gloves when you're welding, obviously a really good idea. When you're working with a machine, especially in the metal shop,
But also in the wood shop.
yeah, I guess also in the wood shop, if you're wearing gloves, you can't feel what you're doing. So you might not realize that something is sharp or hot. Also, those gloves can get caught in a machine and your whole hand gets pulled in. Nobody wants that. We're not gonna do that. So yeah, don't wear gloves unless you're welding. Clamp down your work. Know how the shutoff works? Emergency shutoff buttons look like lots of things, but they're always red and they're usually round. And you'll, of course, as you get badged on, as you get badged on machines, you learn that is a part of it. And the buddy system is often essential. I feel like people find the buddy system annoying sometimes because it's like, oh, I have to go get another person. Does everybody know what the buddy system is? But it's really, as somebody who has worked on the other side of emergencies, not as the victim, but as the person showing up, there are times where like you could get so injured that you can't help yourself. You get stuck in something, like there's a lot of ways that you can, if you're not paying attention, accidents happen, whatever. Having a
Or
buddy,
even you get a little cut and you pass out because there's a small amount of blood and you get queasy from it. Like
yeah.
those are all things.
Yeah, and so having that, the machines that we've identified as needing a buddy are there because the risk is high enough and we want somebody to be there to help you if something happens. It honestly might be apocryphal, but there's a story of a girl who worked at the metal shop in like one of Yale's, departments. And she apparently, as the story goes, she came in one night to work on one of the metal lathes and her hair got stuck in it. And they found her the next morning because I don't know if, this is a story I've been told. I don't know what her name is. Is it real? Honestly, it's feasible. She was probably very good at the lathe, but forgot to pull her hair back or who knows. And it can go badly. So, just like, there's machines in the wood shop, there's machines in the metal shop that require respect and caution. And those are, they're not just for fun. Well,
So not wearing gloves because gloves will get caught. That's probably the biggest from using machinery for a while. I have my hair in a ponytail. I always put it in a bun before I go into either shop. I never wear if I'm wearing like long sleeves, they're definitely close to my arm. If I'm wearing, I don't wear jewelry, but generally like necklaces, if they're really tight against your skin, that's fine. But if they're dangling at all, you shouldn't be using.
So should I tie my hair up more?
I would probably, just if
Tuck
tuck
Okay,
it more.
okay.
Yeah.
Before using a lathe or any
Yeah.
machine that has moving parts that you're gonna be close to, just because something can get caught.
So just like pin it, make sure that it's all pinned in and
Yeah.
all.
yeah, it's a little extra caution is certainly worth it. I always I wear this a lot, just goes in my shirt.
Yeah. contained.
Yeah, yeah, I even this, because it's got like a little bit of a dangly bit, I'll take off. Or I'll like cram it really hard into my wrist so it doesn't move much. Is it necessary? Is it likely this is gonna get caught? Probably not, but I'd rather, nobody needs to deglove themselves at MakeHaven. All right. Measurements. We've talked about how important measurements are.
I had an entire class in college on measuring things.
Really?
In my physics studies. And it turns out it's everybody thinks, and the premise of this entire class was everybody thinks they know how to measure things, and everybody does it wrong. There's an entire, since we're talking about careers, there's an entire career as a metrologist, which is a person whose job it is to know how to measure things. And there's NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Measures. There's a national organization around measuring things. It is harder than you think to get a good measurement. And there's lots of tools and tricks and ways to do it. And most of the stuff that we need, you don't need to have 14 decimal places, how well you like to know your sizes. If you only care that that's about 6 inches long, that's fine. But if you need it to be 6.1273 inches long, then you're going to need to go into a whole different class of measuring tools. And so that we have those in the metal shop, which is really cool.
In the back left corner on those shelves is just all of our measuring stuff. But don't feel like you need to know how to measure properly, I guess. Just understand that, especially in the metal shop, it calls for a higher degree of accuracy. And so getting stuff right is important.
Yeah, I would play with calipers. If you wanted to upgrade your skill, just learning this one tool will be a great way to help. And we have several digital ones around the space so that you can easily take measurements in these 3 different ways. There's the inner width between the big teeth, where you're going to measure like the width of something between those 2 teeth. The 2 small ones sticking out the back, those are to measure how wide a hole is. So you sort of stick them in and then pull them out. And then the one all the way off on the right in that picture is really good for measuring depths. So, there's a whole bunch of ways to use these, but these give you another couple of decimal places beyond what like a ruler could do.
I was just using calipers earlier today for a project that I was working on because I am going to be cutting it on the water jet, and I wanted to make sure that it was, that it was all going to line up, because it's got glass going in it, which is also, once it's set, not very, the margin for error is smaller. All right, starter metal project. So we've got 2 weeks. Yeah, your first weld, do it.
Yeah,
Really fun. It really is.
it feels like a superpower.
It really does. Yeah. You can bend some sheet metal into, you can make a box, you can make, whatever you want. You could create a knife. You could do wind chimes, which are way more, there's so much more to making wind chimes make the sound you want than I would have ever thought about. I came across some copper piping at the bargain barn actually when we went last time, and I was like, oh, these will be cool wind chimes. And those pipes are still sitting in my storage because I started to get into it of like how to make the right, the certain notes, and it's like the length.
So we can create a knife.
Yeah, you can make a knife in the metal shop.
Oh, I know that we
Oh.
can, but that's one of our starter projects.
Oh, if you wanted, if you wanted to, sure.
I would say make a knife is tough if you were gonna like missing his name. He teaches the class of knife making. Daryl. Daryl will do a process where you go from like a sheet of metal all the way to a knife. But you can buy like knife blanks on Amazon, which take you most of the way there, and then you're sharpening and adding the handle and doing like some, you're doing some of the work, but it's not from like a chunk of metal. And that's a great, like in 2 weeks, you could easily get a knife done like that, which is a fun, like give it to a significant other or to somebody who really wants a knife.
So what's
And
the project that one could do.
depends on what your investment, like your time availability and what you're interested in. You know, just getting badged on the welding and doing, you know, doing some practice on welding, that's probably pretty, you could probably do that in one afternoon.
A cool one. There's those weird funky shelves in the front window of MakeHaven, like up on Chapel Street. I welded those out of just a square pipe, and it was 4 or 5 cuts and just as many welds, and I had it done in an hour and a half. So like, it
Well-
depends on how you want to do and what you're going for. Somebody in foundations, not this past cycle, but cohort 2, Arvia made a table out of 1/2-inch square steel tubing. She just cut it, and I think it's still sitting by one of the couches in the main space at MakeHaven with a wooden thing on top. You
Yes.
just make like a metal box, and you set a piece of wood on top, and boom, you got an end table.
You could just use the sandblaster, which also definitely, that's, I'd say that's my second favorite machine in the metal shop. You know, I used the sandblaster the other day for a pair of gardening clippers that I found. Sandblasted them clean, and then I'm gonna resharpen them. That perfectly good project. 2 machines and very accessible.
So
Also,
get some rusty stuff and.
yeah, you could. I mean, I will sandblast anything. I love that machine too. Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun. I found we have a custom heating grate cover in our bedroom, and I wanted to replace it because it just looked gross, and found out that it was custom size. I was like, wait, I don't have to throw this out. Brought it in, sandblasted it, recolored it white with, you know, with just like high quality spray paint. Called it a day.
So I have some little houses, I could bring that in.
100%. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. I've done it on like 4 or 5, because all of our covers are like this really like grayish taupe almost, and that's not my life. And so yeah, I stripped them all, and then we've got the spray booth in there as well, so I put them up on little planks and redid them all white. It's great.
So,
Cost me the cost of a can of spray paint. Yeah. Yeah.
if one wanted to create a carte blanche, a nave, how long would it take?
I don't know, I mean, I think I probably do it in an afternoon,
Okay.
you know, especially, yeah, like if you're getting, it's not me, I don't have a watch on. You know, if you're getting one that's already cut out and you're just, you know, sanding it and putting a handle on it, then, or you're not sanding, you're sharpening it. Yeah, I think you could do it in a couple hours, probably.
Yeah, I think if you're starting with a knife blank that's already like the core shape, you're gonna need the belt grinder. So you're gonna, you know, sharpen, get sort of the tip chisel. Then you'll need to do some sharpening. The belt grinding is gonna be max a half an hour to get sort of an edge, and then you'll sharpen, which is considerably slower. It's like sanding. It is basically sanding, and that's going to be another half an hour to an hour, depending on how methodical you want to be about it. Although it could be quicker if you're just trying to go fast. And then the handle of the knife is all how fancy you want to get. You could just epoxy on a couple pieces of wood and be done with it, or you can go real ornate. There's lots of ways to make it happen. But if you're trying to do a quick and dirty knife, and none of your appeal is aesthetics, you could probably get it done in 3-4 hours. But that's like, really, you already know where you're going.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like, I know you love dog food, Corey, do you want to explain it?
Yeah, it's using the space to make things for the space. Eating your own dog food is a phrase that the tech sector went into when they would make, like, when Google made Google Docs, so they didn't have to keep using Microsoft Word to send reports back and forth, right? When they're internally making things that make their lives easier, MakeHaven uses its metal shop, I would say, for lots of dog fooding. Lior has projects that come out of the metal shop constantly to make the metal shop or other parts of the space better. Chris is all the time upgrading things with something that he's done in the metal shop. The Tormac is on a whole new base. He made a stand for lots of tools by the induction forge, and like Chris used the water jet and other tools to make the clamps for the water jet. There's lots of different ways that you can use tools to make things you need for the tools you have, and even to extend them. So it's a really good trick that you can pull, and it's like one of the nerdy, deeper levels of doing all this stuff.
Absolutely. All right. So yeah, next week we'll get more into the processes of stuff. I'll talk about water jet more, welding, electroplating. Yeah. Yeah, the metal shop's great. I know it can feel intimidating, like to get into, but man, I've had so much fun in there. And yeah, Sean, if you've got house stuff, the metal shop is, oh man, yeah. I will tell you all the things I've done in the house that come out of the metal shop.
Wait, do you guys do plating here?
We can do
Electroplating, you can. I mean, it's actually pretty easy to do, it turns out. There's many different levels of doing a good job of electroplating. But basically you need a couple chunks of metal and the right kind of salty water to set it in, and an electricity source. And that's all it takes to electroplate. But doing it well is a whole other skill thing.
I have a bracelet that I really want to replate, so I would be happy to go on that adventure with you of figuring out how it works. If you're so inclined, yeah. But yeah, this week I just, go through the metal shop badge itself. Think about projects and, what could be fun.